in general, the idea that a game has to be for everyone, I kind of reject that to some extent. I think you need to pick a lane and decide what you want to do with your game, and then you need to do that to the best of your ability.
Hi, Brandon. Hi, Matthew. How are you? It's a big day for you today.
Good. Yeah, it is. We're excited.
Yeah, I just realized that we were going to have the interview on the day that the embargo is for reviews. So I had to ask the question, how are you feeling with the review so far?
Oh, really good. Yeah, we're really excited with everything. It seems for especially for folks that are really into RPGs, this seems to really be kind of scratching that itch. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely performed really well, and we're really happy with it.
Yeah, it's always really hard to tell if like the things that we're prioritizing, the goals that we had, are really truly going to come through in the end. And it's really great to see that the things that we had targeted as things we wanted to improve from the first game seem to be really coming through for people.
That's great. Yeah, I need to ask, how is a day for embargo lifting in a place like Obsidian? How crazy it gets?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is usually at this point, the builds are kind of locked down and locked in place. And so there's a lot of people that are, playing through the games. When major kind of bugs come up, people will be addressing those things. But on days like this, I can tell you most of the team is actually just reading review after review after review and watching videos and talking about all the stuff that they were like, oh, can you believe they said that? Good and bad. And talking through like, oh, man, we should change this in the next one. We should do this, and like, but they didn't see this thing yet, so maybe they'll see that in the next one. And so there's a lot of people that get really excited about that, and it's kind of the culmination of many years of hard work. And so people are excited to for reviewers and for people, and that'll happen tomorrow, and then over the next few days after that, getting the games in their hands and being able to see like their genuine either excitement or just how they feel about everything.
Yeah, definitely. Working on a game for years and years, like kind of in a silo where we're all looking at it and picking it apart in different ways, and we're just like this moment of like, okay, people can play it. People are actively out there. That isn't just this small collection of people get to actually play it, and we get to see what they think is an exciting time.
Well, I think that me as a fan of RPGs and as a fan of what Obsidian has done across the years, it's a really interesting and important interview for me. So I'm very happy that we can talk about this, because I haven't played, of course, yet the game. I'm going to do this probably next week, so I haven't played much of Outer Worlds, just see what people have been writing today, and of course, what have you been talking about the game through all these years. I have a question that is related to some things that you have been talking about, that when you released the first game, you were already thinking about the second game. And I need to ask, why was it important for Obsidian to have this second game for Outer Worlds to become a franchise?
Yeah, so towards the end of the Outer Worlds one, it was clear that we had a good game on our hands and a platform for us to kind of build on. And so the decision was made pretty early of, hey, let's follow this up with a nice sequel. And yeah, I think again, like the review scores, it sold really well. Like it all just kind of lined up for like, yeah, we should take this a little bit further and keep kind of pushing it. And the cool thing was when we did this evaluation, we were kind of like going, where do we want to kind of increase and improve things for a sequel? Some of those things really stood out of like, yeah, we can go much deeper on the RPG. We can spend a lot of time like cleaning up combat, making that feel a lot better to people. We can make bigger areas and really kind of press exploration, so it'll feel better for folks as they're kind of going through. And we hit on those really, really well. And again, I think it's, we're building an even bigger base for if we ever want to continue making another Outer Worlds in the future, right? Where we have a great thing to work on and we can continue kind of pushing on that and growing these things.
Well, Matthew, I don't know if you want to add something up.
Yeah, no, I mean, before we even finished the first game, Brandon had done like a really deep analysis of what he thought of our first outing, and it gave us clear avenues of improvement, right? And so we knew right off the bat, like, oh, if we get to do another one, this is what we want to do with it. And thankfully, because the first game was successful, that was our kind of like green light of like, yeah, I think we should do this. And then, from there, we were able to just kind of use this foundation that we built and then tweak it in different ways and address very specific problems to try and really bring it to fruition. So that's how we focused our efforts.
Well, Outer Worlds 1 is a game that is, even though it's quite a particular game, it has a lot of things that Obsidian has done along the years with other games and other franchises, not only just your main franchise now, that is Outer Worlds. For this sequel, did you think about things that wanted to implement as something like other resources, other stories, other things that you got inspired by, or just focus on the idea of the first game and go through that?
Well, I mean, pretty early on, we typically will look at other media, other games, and say like, hey, what are things that they're doing that we think are interesting, that maybe we want to put our spin on that. For us in particular, we looked a lot at older Obsidian titles or titles from Black Isle or titles from like Troika, and like, because those in many cases those games had a really deep RPG that really affected the narrative in strong ways, and players have a deep appreciation for those things. So we wanted to go back through and try to understand, like, okay, like, where are the things what are the things that people loved from those? What do we love from those personally? How can we then take that idea, those core ideas, those core goals, and then push that forward, for players, 10, 15, 20 years later? So that was a big part of it. But I also looked at a bunch of other things when we were talking about, traversing spaces, things like Deus Ex, Mankind Divided was one that we looked at a lot, and it had a lot of good elements in there in terms of how to interact with the world in an interesting way. And so we incorporated a lot of those types of elements as well.
Yeah, and additionally, outside of even the RPG space, when we were finishing the first game, we actually had an opportunity to hand it over to 343 Studios, now Halo Studios, just to like get their take on like, okay, we've built this foundation for a first-person action role-playing game that uses shooting mechanics, but we're not traditionally like a first-person shooter studio, right? So they were able to give us a pretty deep analysis of how they tackle gunplay systems to make their weapons feel distinct. And so we got to use some of that knowledge as we tackled that element of the second game to try and really differentiate and improve gunplay across the board, which was really helpful.
Well, from what I heard from the reviews, actually the gunplay got really improved, and the reception is really good. So I'm really happy that you got to do that. Also, something that is related to maybe sometimes games can be too expensive. I know the budget from Outer Worlds 1 to Outer Worlds 2 varied a lot. What were the things that you said, okay, now we can do this that we wanted to do with the budget that we have?
Yeah, again, I think some of the larger things are just the amount of content that we can make and the amount of reactivity that we can have in that. So, in many respects, those things are tied directly to, well, how many people do we have on the game working on this? How much time do we have to kind of build these things out? And so because of, Microsoft's resources, we're able to actually take that next step, I think, and kind of, again, make these larger areas and make sure that they're filled with good content throughout. So not only are the areas large, but there's lots of things you can be doing inside of those areas themselves that are fun for the player to kind of interact with and explore. I would say that's the biggest stuff. There's some things that are relying on like presentation and like, well, Matt was talking about with the combat stuff. That's another big leap we can make when we're spending more resources on that particular aspect of it. Matt, if you want to go over some specifics with that.
Yeah, I mean, so as I talked about before, the first game feeling like a foundation, there's only so much that we could do really within that time frame with the resources that we had. But things that we were able to start looking at is, okay, for safer weapons, right? We want each of these different weapon classes to feel very distinct from each other. Cool, now we can actually invest in unique firing animations, unique reload animations for each of these different things, and then unique tuning for all of these elements to make them feel very distinct from one another. In the first game, when we're looking at things like reactivity, the more reactivity you add, the more complex this whole system gets, and you have to start really saying, like, do we have enough time to really dial that in and bug fix it and get it to a state where it's solid? Well, we were able to loosen those constraints here, and so a lot of the cool reactivity that we were able to put into this game, it would have been more difficult for us to do with limited resources, because it takes a lot to put that in place, live with it, see how it's reacting, and start making sure all the pieces fit together. So really, those are kind of the places where we were able to spend a little bit more time, a little bit more resources to improve across the board.
Well, about reactive radios and companions, why did you choose to do such a complex system for companions? I mean, I imagine that it must have been quite a challenge to do something that affects the story so much throughout the gameplay, and of course, it's going to have different outcomes depending on the player, and you have to expect what the player is going to do on an RPG. So how was the development of the new system for the companions and those kind of things that changed the game quite a lot?
Yeah, so I mean, in my opinion, if you're gonna have if you're gonna have companions in an RPG, you need to make sure that those companions affect all of those aspects that we're talking about. Like, they have to affect the reactivity. They have to affect your ability to for your build or the type of character you're making. It has to kind of help that. They also have to, speak to who they are in the world. Like, if we're talking about Niles, for example, one of the first companions you run into, he's an engineer. So he better do things that are reminiscent of an engineer. So he has things like field tinkering. You can work with him and he'll craft stuff for you in the world. And those kind of elements are more expensive for us. It takes a lot to make sure that those things work, that they're integrating well between, what faction they're in, if they're interacting with other factions, their own, gigantic, companion quest and how that kind of fits in everything. These are all very expensive elements for us, but those are the things that are just kind of core to what we want out of an Obsidian RPG. Like, the companions have to feel integrated, not only into the party, but into the world itself, and interacting with them has to have some kind of effect on the world. It has to be a believable thing. Otherwise, why are we doing it at all?
Yeah, I mean, to build on what Brandon's saying here, we really want, if we're going to have companions, we want them to feel like they're their own distinct people in this world, and that they have their own goals and motivations. And when we look at that, we look at, okay, what does that mean? That means we expect them to fight against the player if the player's not going to kind of help them out towards their goals. Cool, that's the point of reactivity we need. But we want them to be aligned with various factions so that they can speak to those factions in the world. But if we do that, we expect they're going to react in the same way that those factions would. And when you bring, say, Inez, who's from Manti's Choice, up to an Order of the Ascendant base, and they're in conflict, you expect there to be reactivity there. You want them to say, hey, hold on, they're not allowed here. Or if they just let them in, without any kind of real reactivity, it wouldn't feel authentic. It wouldn't feel like this person exists in the world and the world is reacting in natural, believable ways. And so we really came from the aspect that we want these things to feel like they're true to the world. We want them to feel like they're reactive in meaningful ways. What does that mean for us in terms of how the content can connect in really cool and interesting ways? And so every time we had the opportunity to try and inject that, we tried to take that.
Great. Well, something that also is quite important for an RPG is the reception of the people, the feedback, because every player is going to play in a whole different way, and things that you were not expecting to happen will happen. So I wanted to know how much of the player reception from the first game, in terms of, for example, builds and things that they experience and weird things that started to happen, because when you are testing the game with a small group of people, things happen. When you launch the game, everything goes to hell probably, and a lot of weird things start to happen. So how much of that changed the new builds on the game and maybe the new factions also?
We took a lot of the player feedback from the first game and tried to incorporate that here. We knew that we wanted to, say, improve some of our stealth systems and broaden our player toolkit. So we did things like, now you've got proper stealth attacks where you can see like a damage preview when you're looking at an enemy and am I going to one-shot them or not? We included more tools like, hey, now you can throw a distraction device and move an enemy AI around the space to get points of advantage or get by stealthily. We did things like put in a new gadget so you can, what we call a dematerializer. You essentially take the bodies and liquefy them into goo so that you can get by undetected. That was a clear place where Yep, we weren't able to take that tool set as far as we wanted. We see that the players wanted more of it and wanted that to be something that they could tackle. So let's give it to them. And we tried to do that in as many avenues as we could. In role-playing games like this, where you do have so much player freedom, and that's what we're all about, it can get really difficult because you're trying to make like 10 different games all at the same time. But we always give the guiding light of, this is your story. We build this world, we build these factions and relationships, and we put you in it. But we want you to be able to tell your story, and we're going to respond to you in interesting ways. So as we're looking at, we saw people wanted to do more of that. We wanted more of that reactivity. We wanted more of the ability to role play in these very distinct ways. So we used that feedback to target the types of toolkit items, the types of perks, the types of progression systems that we put in place so that they could live out the fantasy of these various archetypes that we built for them.
Good. And I have to ask something, because I play with charisma, and if things go wrong with the line, I start to shoot people. So I'm very straightforward with the game. And I play with that build all the time. It was something that you have to outbalance, because there were things that maybe were too easy on the first game, and for the second game they needed to be changed dramatically.
Yeah, we definitely did balance this game differently to be a little bit more difficult kind of across the board. We still do have a story mode, so if somebody wants to jump in and just kind of play with things, they can do that. But as you go up in those difficulties, we expect you to engage and understand more of the systems and utilize them effectively. So once you start getting into those higher difficulties, if you're really not focusing on, I need to build this style of character, I need to synergize my perks and traits and my equipment in meaningful ways, it'll start getting really difficult for you, because enemies are going to start doing a lot more damage, a lot more punishing. But we also wanted to look at the variety of builds that could be supported, and can lots of different styles of characters still get through the content successfully. So even the character that you're building, somebody that's going to maybe be more speech focused, well, we didn't want speech to be like an I win button, just every conversation you go in and you hit the button and cool, I just got through this whole thing without any having to do anything. We allow stuff like the speech skill to help you in certain combat situations, to lead to certain perks that you could take that will help you modify things. But also when you're engaging in things like conversations, we now require the player to really do some due diligence. Just because you have high speech may not get you through everything. You're actually going to have to engage with the world and start exploring, and maybe you got to go rifling through some paperwork and see oh, I got this journal from somebody, now I've got some dirt on them. But now that I've got speech, I can use that effectively in the conversation to modify it in a meaningful way. So instead of just this I win button, we have this level of engagement that we expect from the player. It's a lot of work to try and balance that all across the board with so many different builds and variety, but we try to do our best to support them as much as we could.
Yeah, it's nice. It's interesting to know that the game that grew bigger now also is bigger in every aspect, that you have to go through and interact with the world in a more active way, because maybe having the first one that you had to limit things because of budget, time, and everything that you were building, so it has to be a bit more smaller in that size. So that's really interesting to know, because I'm very happy. Also, you have been working with many games with Obsidian this year, and you have about Grounded 2, now the Outer Worlds 2. What do you think this studio offers differently to the industry, also in an industry that everything kind of is rough at the moment?
Yeah, we like you said, we have those three, in some respects, pretty different styles of games. I know of Avowed and the Outer Worlds 2 can on the surface maybe seem similar, but they're actually very different in terms of what their overall goals were and what they were trying to do. It's interesting because Obsidian, even before it was purchased by Microsoft, has always kind of worked on multiple games, right? We've always had a thing where we worked on maybe 2.5 games, where it was 2 games in full swing, and then one that was always kind of starting up. And then when a game would finish, they would move people over to the one that was starting up, and then they would start getting into full swing, and then we would start up a new game. So having 3 games all at the same time is actually not strange for us. I know it seems like a weird thing to say, but all the teams are actually fairly separate from each other. So the Outer Worlds 2 team, for example, there's not much crossover between the Avowed team. Like, they're just kind of just separate teams with different people. Same thing with Grounded, obviously. And so for us, it is hard for folks like, let's say, Mikey and his comms team, when they're doing stuff, because they have to juggle 3 different games that are going on all in the same year. But for us, in particular, we're able to just kind of focus on the thing that we're doing. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things as well that because we have done this in the past, we're really good at helping each other, also helping each other along. We do blogs to kind of share what we're doing every day, and we can kind of look at between the different teams and like, oh, that's a cool thing that they're doing, that's fun. Or like when we see someone in the office, we can be like, hey, can you stop by really quick? I want you to to test something out and see what you think about this. And so we tend to do a lot of that, and that really helps push people along, push ideas along, and so that's one of the ways that we're able to kind of get more out of the studio through those ways.
Well, and the last question, so because I have to let you go. For RPGs especially, and the RPG audience, how do you see the industry and the genre right now? Because people are now in a moment where we want bigger games, but we also want in the game. We also want more, and sometimes it's hard to level that with the idea that the game has to be for everyone. And Obsidian also has a very core audience. How do you manage that, and how do you see the RPG genre at the moment?
Yeah, so, in general, the idea that a game has to be for everyone, I kind of reject that to some extent. I think you need to pick a lane and decide what you want to do with your game, and then you need to do that to the best of your ability and kind of push that forward. And that means that some people may not like a game because it just doesn't have the things that they're looking for, and that's totally fine. There's a lot of games out there, and, in some respects, there's a good amount of choice just in the games industry in general, and so I think that's a good thing for people to be able to select the things that they want to engage with. The RPG genre in general, I think for years has been going through like a simplification in a lot of ways to try to get as many people as possible into it and interacting with it. I think in some ways the Outer Worlds 2 is pushing back against that a little bit. We do a lot of things which we don't really hold the player's hand. We actively want them to engage with the game and think about what they're doing, and we want their choices to be hard choices that matter. We're not going to give you objective markers that walk you directly to every single objective. Like sometimes it'll just tell you the area it's in, and you need to go explore and talk to people and figure things out. It's those types of things that I think have been lost over time. And I think that what I will say is I think that's starting to come back. I think the reactivity elements are starting to come back. I think that the deeper RPG are starting to come back. You see things like Baldur's Gate 3 or Kingdom Come Deliverance, and like they're leaning into this as well. And this is Obsidian's history. It's where we came from, and it's where we're at our best. And I think in the future Obsidian is looking at that and going like, cool, let's take those lessons, those learnings from some of the earlier games, whether it's at Obsidian or Black Isle or Troika or any of the studios that kind of make us who we are. How do we take those things and kind of and move those things forward while not losing the core of what makes those things special to RPG players? How do we take those things and make them blossom into something that's going to be fun and new for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I can only speak for myself personally, but I think myself and Brandon collectively really believe that there's an audience for true, deep role-playing experiences, and that's what we want to provide to players. And I think that, watering that down isn't really appealing to more people. It might get more people to try it, but I actually don't think that it's really giving the satisfying experience that RPG players want out of those. And so our stance is we will continue to try and double down on deep role-playing systems and that level of reactivity that we personally enjoy in role-playing games because we're fans of role-playing games, but also our audience has come to expect, and I think resonates most strongly when we make that our core. Well,
thank you guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I love what you do at Obsidian. I love the Outer Worlds 1, and I'm eager to play this new release. So thank you, and congratulations also on the good reception of the game.
Thank you, Romina. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.